All right, we're here with a couple of former Marines. I use the word former lightly because I know yours is, Jim, you always say once a Marine, always a Marine.
That's true.
So a couple of former Marines, both with some combat experience, here on the show with us today. We got Jim Bottrell, who spent a lot of years in the Marines. How many years, Jim?
Just under, right at 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years, and now transitioned successfully into being quite a professional, a realtor here in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Bottrell, team with Ardent Real Estate, and I know you're really intentional about hiring ex-military, police, ex-police, firefighters, civil servants, those type of people, that you donate a ton of money to wounded veterans and those types of programs. And
yeah, absolutely, I do. It's always a big plus if we can get somebody with, some sort of first responder or military background or things like that. I mean, from a fundamental perspective, I enjoy the people quite a bit. I just find their character to be exceptional. The other thing is they don't call in sick. They show up to work on time. They don't call in sick. That's something that's pretty nice about working with the military. So, but anyway, I always try and help as much as I possibly can.
yeah.
So we treat them very, very well.
Yeah, and you have that reputation, I know, from doing business with you. So glad you're here. Look forward to what you have to say today. We're also here with James Conway, who spends a ton of time volunteering with Veterans Transition Support, doing a bunch of OSHA trainings, and really involved with veterans and helping them transition into civilian life. Also, 20 years in the Marines.
20 years, yeah.
Yeah, so we're I'm stoked to have you guys here today. Project Connect is all about getting the word out, information, and educating the public, and reaching out to people who are dealing with certain issues or getting past certain things. And if we touch one person today, we win. Mm-hmm. So I'm really excited to have you here. So
absolutely.
I guess I'll start by saying both of you have transitioned pretty successfully, and done really well with yourselves. And I guess I'll start with you, Jim. Were there any issues when you were transitioning from the military into civilian life? I know you're a pretty straightforward guy, and I think anything you put your nose to the grindstone and get after it, you're going to do well at. Mm-hmm. But did you ever come into that spot when you were coming out? Were you prepared? Were there things that you didn't expect, or what was that experience like for you?
Well, that's a big question. Yeah, that's a big question. So when I got out, I had my real estate license before. I was a mortgage lender. I'd owned rental properties, so I knew about that. Got my contractor's license, and I got out and I flipped houses for a while. So I had my real estate license. I was the guy who found the houses, and then I ran the crews, which, by the way, were mostly former Marines that used to work for me that had gotten out. So I had my rank structure inside our civilian company. And we did that for a few years. And then at the end of 2006, it became very obvious, don't own a bunch of extra houses. Right. So one of the things that was required on my crew was that if you were going to work for me and doing the construction, is you had to be enrolled to get your contractor's license. That was just professional military education. You have to better yourself. And I always told them, I said, someday there's going to be a point in time where I don't do this anymore, and you have to be able to support yourself. So once I made the decision, I let them know and saying, okay, there's 3 more houses, there's 2 more houses, there's 1 more house, and then that's it. I'm out. And they all were able to take care of themselves, which is good. And the market crashed, went through a tough time in many respects. I went through a marriage at the time. I kind of got knocked flat on my ass, and can we say that? Can we say that on the radio?
We're
going to go ahead and say that now. I got knocked flat on my ass.
When you get 2 Marines together in the same room, probably a couple.
Well, I didn't throw an F-bomb out there yet, so I think I'm doing okay.
We're not there yet, right?
Yeah, we might get
Give
there.
us some time.
I have a feeling. I kind of lost everything, got knocked flat on that one. That was pretty tough, even though I thought I prepared pretty well for it. So that was a hit. Obviously, picked myself back up, got knocked right back down again, and then picked myself up a third time, got knocked right back down. And then after that, I'm okay now. Haven't been knocked back down since. But it's a tough time because life's going to throw curveballs at you, things that you weren't expecting. I didn't expect to lose that marriage. Life was great. And then I got a call from my wife's brother letting me know what was going on. How about that? So life changed for me. And all of those things that I went through, they all develop character, but people out there need to understand that life's going to throw curveballs at you that you don't expect. And it's not how you fall, it's how you bounce. And for me, I had a lot of people tell me, it's like, I don't know how you got back up, like, especially after the third time. And it's like, I don't know how to lay down. I'm sorry. You know, I don't always know how I'm going to win, but I do know that I'm not going to lose. That's it. So, you know, for the people that are listening out there, that sometimes you go through some hard times, just understand that's normal. And it's all about how you bounce. Just get back up. It's okay. Just get back up.
That's super good advice. I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you, James? Like when you came out and you went into retirement, I guess it is now, however, whether you stay that way or you get into another profession, but you know, were you prepared? Were there things that kind of hit you didn't expect, or?
Yeah, I thought I was prepared. And what happened with me is when I got out, I made a promise to myself years ago that I was going to get my bachelor's. And I'd actually started the process in 2014. But one of the things that I always wanted to do, and one of the things that I think that I missed out on by joining the Marine Corps at such a young age, was I never got a chance to go to college on a college campus. You know,
Right.
the classes that I did were either online or they were later in the day. But I always wanted to get that campus, that college campus, you know, just feel and see what it was all about. Because I like to, I guess maybe I'm just like a dork. Like when other people are out on weekends, I'll sit in my room and I'll just read, or I'll sit at my place and just watch, you know, documentaries or whatever. So toughest thing for me was I retired, and then I had 2 weeks, and then I found myself as a full-time student. And on the very first day, you know, I'm sitting there at 08 in the morning, 8 o'clock. Okay, and I'm ready. I got there 15 minutes prior. I got all my stuff laid out, and you know, these kids just come walking in late, and you know, I get it, you know, traffic, whatever. But the thing that I guess the thing that I had a hard time is, you know, here we are on the first day, and the students are asking the professor, well, what book do I need? And are not showing up prepared. And so I get it. Like, I had to take myself out of that mindset of being a Marine for, you know, 20 years, and here I am sitting next to, you know, these 18, 19-year-old kids. And so that was a shock. That was a huge shock. And I enjoyed my time there, but it wasn't me. I didn't fit in. I mean, look, I'm older. I'm 40. Okay, and the kids were great. Ooh. You know, say what you want about millennials, but you know, the kids were great. You know, they would ask me questions about my prior, you know, time, because I'm the older guy, and they're like, oh, wow. And I always sit up in the front. But just you think with having a structured routine of getting up every day, being at work like we were, you know, and sometimes really, really early and not leaving until later on in the day, you think I wouldn't have a hard time with that. But it was, for me, I like to be out and about. I like to be engaged. The classroom structure from 8 o'clock in the morning and until 1 o'clock, you know, that for 4 months, I didn't really enjoy that part, but I enjoyed the interaction with the professors and the students. So that was, for me, the hardest transition that I went through. And like Jim was saying, at the time I wasn't going through a divorce, but I was going through what you call a breakup. And it was really, really tough. And it was one of the darkest periods of my life. You know, it really was, making that transition. And you hear me say, well, it was, you know, college wasn't, you think college and, oh, it's a breakup, oh, what a rough life. But it was really, really, it was rough, because the structure and everything that I had for 20 years also was gone. And that I didn't feel as needed either. You know, I had 40-something Neanderthals, I like to call them, you know, coming to me, and I'm taking care of them and helping them out, and I didn't have that anymore.
Right.
I mean, and so I go from that and I have a daughter. She's 8 years old. Well, she's 9 now. She just turned 9 in September a couple of weeks ago. But that was it. So I go from having that to just her.
It's interesting when you talk about that, because that's one of the things I was going to ask you guys is, when you're in the military, you got, like, it's a double-edged sword, it sounds like, right? Because you got all the discipline and the structure and stuff, which is probably a big part of what it is in the bounce back that you talked about, Jim.
Oh,
but then also you come out and it's like, wait a minute, I'm coming into this world where not everyone
I thought
is
I was
like
gonna
that.
love it.
So maybe, like, you know, the expectations you have don't match up with other people.
Absolutely.
Well, one thing that I want to comment about you, James, is you were talking about how you were sitting in class your first day, the students come in 15 minutes late, they're not prepared, and you kept saying, I get it. No, you don't. No, you don't get it at all. I was just saying, just the fact he's saying he doesn't get it. And by the way, I've been a civilian ward for 15 years now. I don't get it. I don't understand how you show up late to work. I don't understand how you don't do what you said you're going to do.
Absolutely.
I still don't get it. I just don't.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point, and I'm starting to see that. It's been about a year that I've been out now, and you're right. I see some stuff just in the professional workplace. I'll have students come to our company, and it's just like, wow. I don't know. There's a certain standard and I don't know, structure that the military. It's one of those things you can't really. I can sit here all day and we can both talk about it, but you don't really understand it unless you're there,
right,
or had that experience, I guess. So.
I would imagine that's a big part of because the stats are out there, right? Like I have a ton of them in front of me about how a lot of veterans struggle to assimilate and get back into the groove outside of the military, and I would imagine that shift, right, of going from, even though the stakes are insanely high, right, and you have to have these specialized skills and you better perform or else it's your life or your buddy's life or the mission or whatever that's at stake, and yet there's an order and structure there that what to expect, when to wake up, what you're doing, what's happening, and then you get out in civilian life. And I would think that some veterans struggle with that lack of control, or kind of like feeling like they're swimming in the deep end. You know what I mean? And it's like, wait a minute, where do I go? What do I do? I knew who I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to do.
My take, I don't know if Jim can speak to this, but my thing was, I remember being in my algebra class one time, and I remember somebody, it wasn't the professor, but somebody made the comment, the cliche comment about, you're going to need this in the real world. It was talking about the algebra problem we're doing. I was sitting there and I was thinking about, I was like, I thought about everywhere I've been in the last 20 years, all the people that I networked and contacted, all the stuff that I did. And it dawned on me, and I'm sitting here saying that I've never needed to use algebra, not one time in my life. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why am I in this classroom sitting next to these kids when all my peer group they're around 35, and we're managing, and it was a big wow factor. Now, nobody put me there but myself, and I wanted that experience, and I'm really grateful that I did it. But it's it is it's a transition, and a lot of guys do struggle when they get out. A lot of them either don't have a plan, or they do have a plan and it just totally goes not the way that they thought. Like, I thought I was going to have a great time in college, on a college campus. I didn't think I was going to party, but I just thought, oh, this is easy. I'll get off every day by noon. Go do some homework, go to the beach. It's totally different.
Right.
Totally different. And the workload was no joke either.
Yeah.
So, but I found out real fast within 4 months, and then I didn't go back. I just went back to my old university.
Yeah.
So, and
with you, do you think a lot of why you started your own business is because maybe you can control the structure and you can kind of create, I know it's not the military, right? But you can actually, what to expect. You create the expectations, because I know you have high standards and the bar's high and you're very productive. Do you think that was like a natural path for you because of your military background?
Well, I've always been a business owner, actually. Even when I was, a young teenager, I would always have my own, lawn care business or whatever it is. And when I was 16, I had worked on car dealerships in the summers. It was 12, 13, 14, 15, worked in the dealerships, or worked in the detail shops. So when I turned 16, I bought a pickup truck and I started knocking on doors and washing cars, and that turned into a business. And then that business actually paid for my college education, because I didn't have a VA bill or anything like that. I was just, 17 when I was in college, and parents weren't paying for it. So I actually had employees by the time I was a sophomore in college. I had mobile units, I had employees, I had payroll, I had workman's comp, all the things I was dealing with, plus going to school, getting a finance degree at the same time. I did not have the fun college experience that most people did. Most kids go there, mom and dad's paying for it, to get their degree in underwater basket weaving, and they have a great time. Let's just face it, right? Mine was not it. I didn't, I could have probably taken on a lot of student debt and had a great time in college, but I elected not to do that. I worked my way through college. I sold that company the day I graduated from college. And then I went in the mortgage business. And then after that, I went to, briefly right after that, I went to officer candidate school, and, went in the Marine Corps, did my 10 years there. And then when I got back out, I had my own business flipping houses again. And then once I decided I wasn't going to flip houses anymore, became an independent contractor as a real estate agent. Because, I had a contractor's license, I owned rental properties, I had bought and sold so many houses. I mean, I knew all the elements of real estate, so it just kind of, as my dad says, if you know that much about an industry, that pretty much means that's what you're going to do. And I did that as a real estate agent for a few years, and then started my own company.
Yeah.
But yes, going back to your question, I do like having my own company because I can set it up the way I want it set up. It is as far as real estate companies go, it's not like any other company you see out there. It is run very much like a military operation. The walls are all scarlet and gold. You've seen it.
Yeah.
It looks more like a recruiting office than it does a real estate office. People show up on time. They show up, they know exactly what they're supposed to do. There are procedures for everything. There are checklists for everything. And the standards are high. And you either achieve the standards or you go find someplace else to go. That's fine. I can't control that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think probably I struggled working in the civilian world for people that maybe would do what they said they were going to do and maybe they don't. And I think that's probably one of the things that I think that as people transition out of the Marine Corps, especially if they've been there, or the military, especially if they've been there for a long time, that's one of the biggest adjustments is you think that you're going to get out and the civilian world is going to be somewhat similar to the military where, 10 a.m. means 10 a.m. Well, to the civilian world, it doesn't.
Right.
To the civilian world, it could be 10:30, maybe 11, 11:15, or maybe not at all. And that seems to be acceptable. And that's very hard for like James and myself to accept. We're not okay with that. I don't think I'll ever be. I don't want to be okay with it. I don't want to adapt. I don't want to be okay with that ever. People saying doing what they say they're going to do. It's one thing that I can tell you that about myself. I, in my entire life, have always done exactly what I said I was going to do. Even if I start doing it and realize this isn't working to my benefit. But if somebody else is depending on that, we're going to do it. Period. Right. It doesn't matter, even if it works against me. I said I was going to do it. That person's depending on this being done. It's going to get done. But that's one of the things you don't see in the civilian world, because the moment they feel that they don't, it doesn't benefit me anymore. They're just done, and they don't seem to care about it. And I think, honestly speaking, I think it's one of the very big issues that people have, that people coming out of the military probably have. I know that was one of my struggling issues. And we haven't even gotten into the combat stuff or anything like that. But I'm just talking people that, just transition out. That's tough. That was a very, very rude awakening for me.
Right. No, and it's interesting that you said you guys have two different stories in the fact that from what I'm gathering, you had some business experience, had some other experiences, went into the military, right? You went in.
I went right in. Yeah, I graduated my senior year and went right in that summer.
Right.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. Standard enlisted kid.
So different experiences. Yeah. How much, like in your experience with veterans and working with them, in the volunteer time that you put in, what structures are there from the military, or what's there for them to help them be prepared? Because some of the stuff that I read was like, the stats are crazy. They're mind-blowing about how they don't have their resume ready, they don't have a job lined up, they don't have housing figured out. A lot of them really kind of, they walk out of the military and it's like, okay, what do I do now? Like, is there anything there for them to almost kind of prep?
There's a ton of stuff. The question is whether or not they do it. It's up to them whether to do it. I mean, I think the military did a pretty good job of showing me the door and everything that's required to get to the door and through the door, but it was still up to me to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I always say that the Marine Corps gives you an opportunity. It's what you do with that opportunity. It doesn't do anything for you. It just gives you an opportunity. And we've seen guys squander it. With great careers. I've seen it with young NCOs who happen to just make a bad decision, and then their careers. I've seen it with young officers. Unfortunately, I've seen it with even higher ranks, sergeant majors and first sergeants and master sergeants. But it gives you an opportunity. That's what the military does, and they'll give you the tools and everything, and say, hey, if you want to go this route, this is for you, and it's not going to do you any harm. It's not going to be fun. But at the end of the day, some people choose to do it, and other people don't. And it will weed you out really quick. The Marine Corps, I can't speak for all branches of service. And I know when we came in around the time that we did, it was a totally different – it was a different time. It was a different era. Jim, you said 95, right? 95. I came in 98. And it was just, I mean, different
Right.
time.
Well, at least the Marine
but
Corps
the
doesn't have
concepts are
stress
still-
cards.
What's that?
At least the Marine Corps doesn't have stress cards in boot camp.
Yeah, no, at least not that I don't think they do.
No, they don't.
No, okay, I hope not. But yeah, so it gives you an opportunity. But back to what you were saying as far as the transition, there are tons of programs. The group that I'm with, Veteran Trans Services Support, we try to give them everything they're going to use and need, but it's up to them. And if they want to show up, they can show up. And I've talked, and it's unfortunate because I've talked to many people, and they said, okay, yeah, I'm going to be there, and we're going to waive whatever we can for the OSHA, get them the OSHA 30 training that they need, and we just don't see them.
Right.
And
So-
everybody, so it is what it is. But we never stop trying.
Right, yeah.
And you never, of course, you never want to do that.
So if you were out there watching, listening, and you were someone that was about to transition, or a spouse of someone, or whoever it is, a friend of someone, whatever, brother, sister, like the advice would be, hey, there's stuff out there for you. If that's your next step, get a jump on it, get your ducks in a row, figure out maybe at least some options on where you go from here.
And this is a problem that I was talking with Russell Levy, who founded VTS, Veteran Transition Support. It's out there. What I'm starting to see is a lot of the service members, at least the Marines, don't know where to go find it. Now, it's like we were talking about a little bit before we started the show here. They get a week on the back end of their career. It's called TRS, Transition Readiness, something like that, I believe it's called. They basically give you a week, and they teach you how to build a resume, how to get on LinkedIn and go find all these jobs that are out there.
Right.
But for somebody that's done it for 20 years, I mean, how can you take 20 years and compact it all into a week? How can you take 4 years? You got the Lance Corporal that's been in for 4 years. How is that benefiting him or her? It's just not. And I think there should be a month long. And the Marine Corps should, and of course, what James Conway thinks the Marine Corps should do is not really going to happen. But give these young kids at least a month. Put them on TAD and just have them down there the whole time. At least give them a month. I mean, it's better than a week. But there are organizations out there. It's getting the word out, and it's really getting to the point where, like Friday, we're just gonna have to go on base and start just talking to people and just really, really getting the word out. But and they don't cover a lot of it locally. They don't cover it in TRS right there at Pendleton. Right. It's unfortunate. So
I think too, like when I was thinking about this, I thought, and maybe if I'm being ignorant, you guys can correct me, but I would imagine there are a lot of people in the military that have very specialized skills and jobs and duties and what they do. And I was thinking, like, you mentioned being in it for 20 years and then all of a sudden coming out and, like, where do I go from here? And it's almost like if you were a brain surgeon, right, or a doctor that focused on one thing, and then all of a sudden they said, okay, so tomorrow you're leaving the hospital and, we're going to help you and let's figure out what you're going to do. Right. It's like what that guy's done for 20 years is do surgery on brains or, whatever it is.
Well,
and
there are MOSs.
It's like, geez, now I find myself like going from, I'm really dang good at what I do. I've been really successful. I've changed a lot of lives. I've done some good stuff. And now I find myself saying, like, am I filling out applications at, grocery stores and Starbucks, and not to take away from any of those jobs, a job's a job, but like, you get what I'm saying, right? Like, there's got to be somewhat of a kind of a pride factor, an ego factor, like a self-worth. Wow, like I was really important and the stakes were high and I was really good at what I do. And now all of a sudden I'm coming out here and it's like, well, I can't do that thing anymore.
Yeah. I see a lot of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. People that were in charge of a whole bunch of people, a lot of responsibility, and then you end up working at Walmart or something like that. Not against Walmart, but that's, it's going to be tough for a company gunny or something like that, or a first sergeant, be in charge of 225 combat Marines, and then now he's in charge of stocking a
especially,
shelf.
Not only that, but just, absolutely, but, to have someone that's younger than him and not as experienced, and not that we would look down on that. It's just, it is what it is, but to be in that position, like what he was saying, you have a company of Marines and just everything that you've done, and now you're going to transfer into working in retail. Now you got maybe 5-6 people, and you've got a boss or a supervisor, manager.
Right.
It's just kind of, what experience do they have? And it's not really their fault. It's just that's just how it is.
Right.
Yeah. It's just it's just kind
But
of.
I would think that would be a humbling, kind of like a tough thing
yes.
to to motivate to that, which I would imagine is
Right.
why a lot of folks flounder, or like veterans.
Right.
There's a ton of homeless people that are veterans.
My friends that have transitioned, got out, retired, whatever, did their contract and they got out, that have transitioned into law enforcement, firefighting. They do very well.
Yeah, that's great.
Because it's already structured just like the military.
Right.
And they do great things. Even though security companies, I was an infantry guy. Both were you infantry? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I can only speak for the infantry side of the house. But a lot of guys in other MOSs that have that technical skill set, like you were talking about, they do try to take that and transition it into the civilian world. And a lot of them do, but a lot of them don't either. And that's and it's really really.
Comm guys will go work for communications, and the aviation mechanics will go work
makes
for one
a ton
of
of
the airliners
sense.
or something like that. That
Absolutely.
makes sense. That makes sense. But being the infantry guy, there's not a lot of jobs like that in the civilian world.
No,
Right.
no, there's not.
Yeah, but like you said, going to the police department or the fire department or something like that, or some of these guys go FBI, DEA, things like that. I mean, those are all. At one point in time, I was very close to going DEA, and it seemed like a quite a fun job.
Yeah.
But those there. The jobs and the opportunities are out there. I it's probably going to be unpopular, but I think that a lot of the people are just not seizing the opportunity that's there.
I agree.
And
I agree.
it's there. It's there. I don't know of too many people that don't want to hire military over somebody else. I mean, I think they would. I think that if the people are, getting out and going back to Missouri or something like that, I think that there's enough that take some initiative. Go Google resumes and just start looking for who's hiring out there. It's like, I was a company gunning. These are all the things that I did. I think those jobs are there.
Yeah, and there's no. I can't speak for everybody, but I don't. For the guy that does his 20 years, 4 years, I don't care if it's 16 years. You need to have a plan, and starting my bachelor's degree. I started back in 2015. I knew that I wanted to have it by the time that I retired, and I put in place the steps that I knew that one day this transition is going to come. And I've seen so many people struggle. I don't want that to be me. Now, granted, I was very blessed on the back end when I got out for retirement and some certain things there that was able to help me out that some guys don't get, as far as disabilities and stuff like that. But the onus is on the service member. And it's even harder for the younger guys, because when you're 21, 22, you don't think about what you're going to do. You're either going to do this for 4 years, or you're going to get out, and then you're going to go back home and work construction with your buddy and make lots of money and smoke lots of dope or whatever. That's how it was when I was in 99.
That's a lot of them, though.
That's the mentality was in back. When I know in 1998, one termer, I'm going to do my time, get out, maybe go to school, go to college. Oh yeah, I have a plan, but they really don't. Right. And it's shocking. It's kind of scary in a way, but you need to be prepared. And nobody told me. I just took the onus on myself, and I was like, man, I just need to start getting this rolling.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a common thread through the two of you, which is why you were able to successfully transition and get into what you do. I think you made a good point with a lot of people. A lot of employers would rather hire military. I know I have some income properties, and I always go to the military site first, because I know they're held to a certain standard, right? If they don't pay the rent, I go to CO, right? Like
Article 134.
And that's another thing too. Is there's this word called accountability that I love. In the civilian world, I guess the only accountability is you quit or you get fired, but in the service, it doesn't matter how much you hate your life, you're not going to get fired. And it takes a lot to get kicked out and fired. So you learn real quick just to do your job. And if you don't, there's going to be an accountability. And you learn real fast. I know I did as a young Marine. It's better to do it right the first time, and then I don't have to worry about it. But and you can speak to this, Jim. I mean, with you have people that work underneath you, and accountability is huge. Like he was saying earlier, showing up on time and all this other stuff. And it's just I guess for us, we don't understand how hard it is. But then again, maybe I was that guy that was always late before I went to boot camp. So I don't know, but accountability is huge. Yeah, accountability is a big thing.
So with all of that and being the discipline, the accountability. Clearly, businesses want to hire military, and the resources are there. They may not be like, staring them in the face, but if someone looks, they can find them. So you mentioned something about us, talking about combat and things like that. I got to think a lot of the veterans that come out, or at least a portion of them, maybe have had experiences or something that happened that were traumatizing, right?
Traumatizing, sure.
And have left them, obviously PTSD is a big thing, but just the experience that you have in combat and things like that. I mean, I know you've been in combat. I don't know, how does that affect the transition? How did it affect it for you? Do you think that's something that, I think that it's kind of a rhetorical question, right? Like, I know the answer is that yes, it does affect people, but.
Of course it is. And there's a lot of people that don't understand that PTSD is real. It is absolutely real. It is amazing what the human being can do to another human being. And it's just hard for your brain to see that. So you come back different. You do. I mean, I don't sleep, pretty much haven't since 2003. It increased a lot of productive time for me. So I look at it from a positive as much as I can. But you go through your episodes. You go through the times where you just really struggle. I had a gentleman that worked for me for a long time, and he's a Silver Star recipient. And his combat experience was a lot and very, very intense. And it really ate him up. It was hard having him. Sometimes it was really hard having him in the office because I could see when he was starting to go over the edge, and it was really quick. I'd get him out of there as quickly as I could, and we'd go do something, and I'd just take his mind off of it. But there are other times maybe I'm not in the office, and he just becomes incredibly anxious. He'd turn ghostly white, and he'd start to sweat, and you could and there's no reason. He's sitting there working on an office desk, and he's just cratering, and you can see what's happening. And it's all from his prolonged, combat experience. So it is real. It does impact people tremendously, and I mean it's a challenge. I say this in our first-time homebuyer seminars, our VA seminars all the time. The Marine Corps was really good at teaching me how to get back home. They weren't very good at teaching me how to be back home. So that's a challenge. So it's a challenge for me. Mine wasn't that extensive. I deal with it for the most part and get through it. I've had to seek help a few times for it because it just become a little too much, and that happens. It's pretty normal, I think. Yeah. And but then there's some people that you couple that with having the I guess it's a gene, alcoholism or something like that, or some sort of addictive thing like that, and you start coupling PTSD with something like that, now you start really seeing some issues. So the gentleman that worked for me, he had that. He had a highly addictive personality. He struggled with alcohol. He struggled with a lot of things. And so then when you start coupling the PTSD with that, either one of those on their own probably would have been pretty manageable. When you started coupling the two of them together, that was very self-destructive. Very self-destructive, and it gets to the point it's like I actually don't know how to help this guy.
Right. Well, and that's you speaking as former military, someone who's been in combat, who can empathize, right? Yeah. So you can only imagine if you're working somewhere else with someone that has no idea. They might look at that and say, "This guy, he's got a screw loose," right? And I say that in all seriousness. I'm not trying to be a smart ass about it. It's like really someone could look at that and say, "Man, this guy's combustible." You know what I mean? Yeah. Like he can't be here. Whereas at least you had the empathy to say, "Hey, let's get out of the office. Let's check it out." So like even in that scenario, you were able to recognize, wow, this is going to be a real challenge. And I think the part where you hit on substance abuse or those tendencies or the likelihood of someone having those issues, I mean, I could see that being a big issue, which then you just spiral, right? Because how important is
it's a pain masker. A lot of guys use it, right? Alcohol or drugs, whatever that they go to. Gambling. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that guys find, and I think they use it as a way to distract, or at least temporarily, reduce the pain that they're feeling, suppress the memories, so to speak. And what you're saying, you're absolutely right. It does spiral, and it will eventually.
Right. Through your program, is there the availability, or at least you have the ability to refer to resources for some
Sure.
of these guys that come out and they tell you, or you can see it, or they might say, hey man, I was in some pretty crazy stuff. And
yeah, we do a lot of outreach with different companies in Southern California, Easter Seals, Interfaith, even the San Marcos Vet Center and the Oceanside Vet Center, because that's where our office is in San Marcos. And there's I think there's Escondido Vet Center. And so when I talk to, like, we have students or somebody that comes in, normally I'll say, hey, why don't you call the vet center, because they're great. And they offer, it's group therapy, individual counseling, therapy, whatever the case may be. They offer recreational stuff for the guys and the girls to go out and get out. I've never used them personally myself, but I've heard. So that's where I steer them towards. And of course, I always give them my number and say, hey, text me, call me anytime you want to talk.
Yeah,
and some of them have done that. So
do you think there's sometimes like an element of like toughness or that kind of thing, where I know it for men probably more than women, but like for military folks, that if when they're going through that stuff, they don't reach out and get help
I would
as much as maybe a civilian, or like is there kind of is that kind of bred in you that it's like, hey, like you tough it out, you grit it
while you're in? It is, because I can't speak for everybody. I can only say for me, if while you were in and you were even in the infantry community, okay, you were looked at for PTSD or you wanted to go get help for it, I don't want to say you were blackballed, cast aside, but you're going to get a few looks and some eyebrows.
Get razzed a little bit.
And you're going to get those few looks and those eyebrows from the same guy that's going through the same thing. It's just, it becomes a culture of, I don't know, machoism or whatever. But I mean, look who Marines are. I mean, most anybody that steps, does a full 30 into a recruiter's office, I don't care what branch of service is. I mean, that's very honorable. But to do it into a Marine Corps recruiting office, I mean, it's pretty interesting. And
you're going to be given the opportunity to find out who you are.
A lot of egos, a lot of alpha male, dominant organization, type A personalities, especially in the infantry community. So a lot of guys, from my experience, they were, I don't want to say blackballed, but they were kind of maybe ridiculed a little bit. But that always wasn't the case. Sometimes the command would be there to support him, get him help. If he was severely messed up, I always saw the command do the right thing. For the most part, the command, the upper echelon leadership stepped in. As far as from the peers and everything like that, that's where the pressure is. The guys that you're constantly around, because now if you're going to get checked out and you're around a bunch of guys that have been through the same thing, but they're not feeling it, it's like, dude. And then for those guys, it becomes well, can we depend on you in the future going forward? I mean, you're having problems this time. What if we go on another deployment? I mean, there's
some realities there, right?
Absolutely,
like that's
absolutely.
real. Like when you're side by side with someone, so it's there's an element of machismo, but there's also an element of real like life and death situation. I need to lean on you,
right? And I think some guys are almost like, it's like, dude, how can you do that? How can you? Why, man? Because like I think a lot of times they're afraid that they're gonna leave or go get help, because we saw that too. I had a Marine one time he just wanted to talk to a counselor. He comes back, and 2 weeks later, he's on limited duty, and now we got him down at Wounded Warrior Battalion. And you're like, whoa, what happened here? And he's one of our little rock stars, and he's a stud. But so it's, you don't really know what someone's going through, really.
Yeah.
So, but
do you stay in touch with a lot of the guys that you were in the Marines with?
No.
Not
too many.
Yeah. How about you?
I do. I don't. I wouldn't say. I mean, how many is too many? I mean, I just got off my Facebook a few months back, and most of it they were all Marines. And I think it was like 500. But I'm not on social media anymore. I do keep in touch with some guys, but I don't find myself reaching out and saying, "Hey, what's going on?" or "What are you guys doing now?" or I don't. It's.
Is there something to that?
It's
like,
just,
is it intentional, or is it just kind of the way it played out, or you just kind of turned the page? And
the people that I was in Iraq with, that's intentional, because there's things I just don't want to remember.
Yeah.
Honestly, just don't want to. People before that, yeah, I stay in touch with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Combat, the guys in combat that we serve with, I don't. There's one guy. He's a captain. He's actually an instructor at IOC.
Okay.
He's over there. I promoted him to sergeant, and then he got out, and then he got commissioned, and I still keep in touch with him. But from our combat time, and I have another buddy that's a warrant officer. He's in Japan, but other than that,
Yeah.
I don't keep in touch. We don't talk.
See, I have just listening to you guys, I have so much respect for you guys and for all military and veterans. Like, it's intense. Like, I have such a grand appreciation for what you guys do and what you did and guys that are out there doing it today. Because I think all of us have this opportunity to do it, right? And put in some time and protect a lot of the freedoms that we have. And I definitely considered it at one point, but it was a pretty short consideration.
Do you want to ask us
honest.
you want to ask us if we consider it again?
I would.
No, I think I would
do it
too. I think I would. Would you be infantry though? Would you go the infantry route again?
Well, I really wanted to be a pilot.
Yeah,
I was a private pilot going in. I'd passed the flight school, but I was a college grad when I went in. So
cool.
There was no quotas, and
Right.
guys like, yeah, you can just do what's called a fleet accession program. Well, I didn't know that they only take 6 people per year out of 174,000. So I didn't.
That's
I
right,
got
the FAP. We call it the FAP. The FAP program.
I got. I didn't get anything the first try. Second try, I got first alternate, so I got number 7. I was the first loser. And then I tried it a third time, and I got first alternate again. So I was first loser again. And then I was 29, and I was too old to apply.
Wow.
So that's the one thing in my entire life that I ever really tried to do that I didn't succeed at. That's it. So it's that one's tough because that was always kind of what I felt I was destined to do. But I absolutely fell in love with being a platoon commander, being a company commander. I mean, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Incredible responsibility. I mean, an incredible responsibility, but also at the same time, the biggest honor I've ever had in my life of leading Marines. Are you kidding me? That was the greatest thing ever. So I would go do it again. I would go back to the depot again in a heartbeat. I loved the depot.
So tell me what the depot is.
Tremendously down there.
Depot is the boot camp. I did 9 cycles down there.
Yeah, did you?
And that was awesome.
So
incredible.
You were in San Diego. In Paris Island, so I was the West Coast. So you have two coasts.
I'm assuming if you're going back there, it's not to go through boot camp. It's as some kind of instructor.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That was great.
Give me my green belt, my cover, and that's where when we're talking about combat and we're talking about rewarding experience. And Jim's talking about his, the 3 things that I'll take to my grave is that the most rewarding things I've ever done. Being a father to my little girl, but in leading Marines in combat, but training those kids, the recruits, how to be Marines. I mean, that was that was amazing, and man, it was. I will say I used to say it was $1 million experience. I wouldn't pay $1 to do again. but I do think about my time down there, and it was really, really, it was a way to give back, and it was really, really, it was intense, but it was fun, and I can't
Lots
think
of great stories.
I can't think of another profession in this world where you show up in the morning, and you're already soaking wet, from the South Carolina humidity, and you're in your Charlies, and your throat's hurting, and you smell the stuff that the recruits are using to clean the house, and you hear them in there screaming, and you put your hand on the door, and you just kind of put your head down. You're like, I really don't want to do this today. Oh, this is going to suck. And then you open the door, and then you step in, and all that pain just goes away. And then you're just like, it's an adrenaline rush until, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock when you get in your car, and then you find yourself, you're just defeated. I mean, there was times I fell asleep in my wife at the time. There's times I fell asleep in my food. I mean, I woke up, I had night sweats. My bed was soaking wet. I threw up blood a couple times. First couple, it's like,
they don't realize how hard it is on the drill instructors. It's much harder than drill instructors than it is the recruits.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yes.
On pickup day, I always had so much respect for the drill instructors. They'd have the Charlies, which is the gabardine greenish pants, and then the khaki shirt, with all the ribbons and everything on it, and the chloroform shoes and the cover. And when the kids got picked up, which was usually about 11.
Yeah, on
11
Friday.
a.m.
It was always on Friday.
Yeah. And by the way, it's not like Friday, hey, weekends off. No, there are no weekends off for 12 weeks. It's just 7 days.
3 months of
7 days. It's day on, stay on. But they would go through three completely. They would in the duty hut. They'd have 3 complete sets of uniforms ready to go, in addition to the one they're wearing.
Always.
Because they would work so hard, they would literally just sweat through the clothes. Have to run into the duty hut, and what's funny is each one would have a new set of shoes, and each set of shoes was a half size bigger because their feet would swell so much, and then just they worked so hard at everything. They had so much admiration and respect for the drill instructor.
Series commander.
I did 5 cycles as series commander, 4 as a company commander.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I know, and that's the thing with the officers that are down there too. I forged a lot of great relationships with some of the the company commanders that were down there and the series commanders, because the officers work too. Now it's not as physically taxing on the officers, but they're still in the office. They're going over the reports, the recruit incident reports, or an allegation, or and unfortunately, I still have buddies on the officer community too. And the thing that used to break their hearts the most was when unfortunately you'd have a drill instructor get a little carried away, and then you had to going back to accountability, and that's something that you never want to deal with. I
never lost a hat. I never had an NJP.
Oh, that's awesome.
Not that they didn't deserve it sometimes. Right. Let me just go ahead and put it that way. But we would find a way for the first sergeant to handle it.
Yes. No, that's good. And that's the way it should be.
You get a drill instructor driving the bobsled for the entire cycle, or he has to carry a copy of the SOP in his hand for the entire cycle, or they painted the benches outside the office. Whatever the first sergeant wanted to do, as long as it didn't hurt a recruit or something like that. I usually let it. It's like, I think maybe you just need to stop talking.
No,
I think you need to go talk to the drill instructor, the first sergeant.
I guess the reason why we're hard, you let 2 veterans prior, guys that are on the depot, series commander, we can start talking. But one of the reasons why we're harping on this is because it all starts in boot camp. It really does, and everything we're talking about today. I mean, regardless of what walk of life you come from, it's so amazing. And one of the things about it, I don't know if you saw it in your squad bay, but I would have literally just in one cycle. One summer I had a doctor. I had he graduated from Notre Dame, actually. I had a prior Army Ranger. I had gangbangers. I had college guys with master's degrees. I had teachers. I had firefighters. I had poor kids, rich kids, black, white, brown, all walks of life. And you put these kids in that squad bay, and you just watch how they don't know nothing on day one, and to see them on graduation day, and it's what they've become, and knowing that you and your team, like the company, put all that work in there, and now they're going to go out and be United States Marines. That and leading them in combat is, man, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, it was the best job I've ever had.
It is.
I gotta say, as someone like from the outside looking in, the joy on your guys' faces when you talk about all this stuff.
Oh yeah, you see the smiles, both of us.
It's
smiling,
very cool.
About that stuff.
And you talk about the adrenaline and all that stuff, right? Like, it was intense, the pain, the adrenaline. But I think that's probably a big part of what people miss, right? Like, it's pain, it's all that stuff, but these guys come out, and a lot of times it's like, where do I find that? Yeah. Right? Where do I find something where it comes with that adrenaline, that type of intrinsic reward? We're not talking about money.
No.
But you know what I mean? Like, that kind of stuff, I would think, is a big part of why someone turns to the bottle or can't find a job that's rewarding enough for him to commit to, or goes job to job. Or
I wish they'd go into like the PD or the fire department, or try and get on a SWAT team, or something like that. Or
I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that you guys shared today, is that finding something that's going to kind of play on your strengths and do those things. Like, hey, you talked about, hey, you're in communications, get into that type of field. Like, I think that's invaluable advice.
Absolutely. And I and it sounds like, Jim, you're doing what you want to do. And me, we talked about this earlier. All I ever wanted to do since 7th grade was be in the military. And we were talking about the transitioning. I never planned to do anything other than what I was doing. I thought in my head I was going to be able to do this, or do the Marine thing until I was 50. But then eventually your body catches up with you, and you mentally start slowing down, and you're like,
it's a young man's
game. And and I got to about year 18, 17, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And
it just breaks your body.
It does. It breaks you, not just physically. It can break you a little bit mentally, but not so much mentally for me. It was physically is where it's just, and I 20 years, I'll go to my grave. I was never on light duty.
Wow.
But I was on limited duty. They bypassed the light duty, put me straight on to limited duty. I was on limited duty for a year, but never light duty. But I was also, that's because a lot of us are hard-headed. We don't want to go to medical. We don't want to get looked at, to get checked up on. I mean, you got the captain over here, or the first lieutenant, right? The company commander. He can't go to medical. He can't be on, what, you kidding me? A company commander, SIQ? I've never even, to this day, I've never even heard of it. And you're sick. Staff NCOs, the platoon sergeant company, we're sick. We can do that, but we're not going to go lay in quarters. So it's a lot of, but now being retired, we can do that.
So what's next for you?
Said I've had a few job offers, but I like what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
I really, really do. And I really, the big thing for me right now is helping these veterans out with the VA process and how to transition out, because a lot of them they just don't know. They think they know. And, it's like when you hear enough rumors, eventually it becomes truth to a lot of people. But we got guys coming in to our office all the time, with just so much wrong information. And that's what we try to do. When we go to Wounded Warrior Battalion at Camp Pendleton, we just try to get the right information out. So,
right.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll kind of finish up with a question for both of you and probably like the most poignant question for this, if anybody's watching or listening, would be, if you were someone transitioning out of the military, or if you were, a spouse, a parent, a brother or sister, or someone close to somebody that was, like, what would be your advice to that person? And if you were someone in their life, right, like, what would be your advice to someone like that, supporting them? Like, what's the best advice for them to successfully kind of come out of this and get on their feet and, be successful, as a civilian,
It's
producing.
Prior planning prevents
yes,
poor performance.
you have to have a plan. If you don't, you're gonna struggle. And this is what we see. We see all the time. The guys that struggle, the ones that did not have a plan, or they got in trouble and their career just, we're
but
trying
that
to help
doesn't
them.
matter. You can still
Absolutely,
so
you still have a plan. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Get up.
But what we see is a lot of time, and you saw this, like, it's the whole, okay, you got knocked down now, instead of taking ownership responsibility, and now I'm just gonna lay back, point the finger, and but I guess that happens in any walks of life, and Marines, they'll do that too. Some of them, the guys that get in trouble. But yeah, you're right. Have a plan. I mean, it's personal responsibility. That's how I look at it. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is not going to be around forever. I did 5 years ago. It was in light bulb when I got to start going to medical. I got to start. This is my life.
Right.
And that's when I started going to college and just trying to better, pad my resume more. Because 20 years of experience in the United States Marine Corps. Okay. But it's kind of nice to have other things that go on to that, certifications, degrees, training, and whatever. Just so you got to have a plan.
Well, there's a lot of people out there that maybe they didn't go to their MOS wasn't a technical MOS, like, comm, or like, an aircraft mechanic or something like that.
Right.
But it's all leadership. I mean, as a Lance Corporal, they're now leading people. And so there's tools for that. There's advantages. Yeah. If you can leave people, motivate people, not be a manager, but be a leader, and the Marine Corps is very good at teaching you this, then you can go do any job you want to do. We just got to teach you the job. So I bring on agents once in a while that have never sold a stick of real estate. That's fine if they're good people willing to work hard, and they do what they're supposed to do, and they want to help people. That's the stuff I can't teach. I can teach them real estate. That's not a problem. So just because maybe you're getting out and you don't have that skill, maybe you're a rifleman or something like that, and you just can't, nothing easily translates over. You have the leadership skills. Put it into a resume. Write down things that you did and put it there, and then start sending it out. Start making phone calls. Don't just shoot a resume and just expect somebody to call you back. Getting a job is sales.
Yeah, follow up.
Getting a job is sales, and you're going to be told 7 times before you're told yes. That's just sales. Getting the job, you think about it, would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sales. Yeah, if somebody said no, you go, okay.
Right.
No, that's not the right answer.
Right.
anything in life worth doing gets very difficult at some point in time. Yeah. Anything in life gets very difficult at some point in time. Gets very, very hard. And that's where you need to just man up and do it.
Yeah. Right.
You don't get a choice. Yeah. Like I said, I don't always know how I'm going to win. I do know I'm not going to lose.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact.
That's good advice. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate you. Like I said, ton of respect for you and appreciate you and your service and
thanks.
I hope some of this information gets out there and people get it. They prepare. If they're struggling with stuff, whether it's PTSD or anything like that, that they set their pride aside and get some help and talk to people and realize there's programs out there that they can get education, training, information. And then there's a ton of business people out there like yourself that understand the value of the type of integrity and structure and, discipline that comes from people who have been in the military. So not to kind of lay on their back and, give up or kind of woe is me type thing. Like, I don't know what they'd say in the Marines when you were like that. Is there like a saying, get going or something?
Probably
I mean,
to repeat. Probably nothing you can even say on a podcast. To be honest with you.
There we go.
And if you are told, you're only told once.
Yeah. If you told me, you'd have to kill me.
Yeah.
So.
It's like, yeah. So, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And hopefully this information helps some folks. So,
thanks
so much.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.